Hey folks, John Wilson here, and my webinar today is called The Power of No Power, How to Unplug and Get Outside. Those of you that know me know just how near and dear this topic is to my heart and how critical it is for me to impart to you just why it's so important that we have and make being outside a part of our lives. As always, we are live streaming on Facebook, and this webinar will be available for download on our website, soarnc.org/webinars. And we are so thankful to those of you that are listening and sharing these webinars. So let's get started. Also, if you have any questions or you want to make a comment, you can do so in the chat bar. Our marketing director, Brittany Howell, will be monitoring that and will make sure that we add any of your comments to the discussion. So I'm going to spend a few minutes bombarding you with how big a problem this really is. What is the problem with screen time? Well, today, children are spending an average of 6 hours a day in front of the computer, as opposed to only 3 hours in 1995. 6 hours a day. And if your house is like my house, on some days, there's more time being spent on the computer than that. An abundance of screen time leads to less snacking and less sleep. And what do those issues create? Well, what we're learning about sleep hygiene and sleep is that if you don't get enough sleep, especially during the formative years, that creates a lifetime of issues and challenges. And what does snacking do? Well, snacking leads to obesity. Time in front of screens ultimately it makes children irritable and unhappy. And what's so insidious about that is that they're so drawn to it, yet honestly, sometimes it creates such misery. You also have, according to researchers from Harvard, over 6 hours of blue light exposure can delay sleep for up to 3 hours. So if you've got a young person who's got sleep issues and the blue light is activating the brain, and now they can't go to bed for 3 hours until that blue light has subsided, you can start to see how the issue with screen time can be so devastating. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends limiting time screen to 2 hours a day as a result. 2 hours. And in this day of virtual school, that we recognize how impossible that is. And so, we have got to come up with ways so that if they're spending time on the computer, how do we get them outside doing things in nature that mean something and can matter to them when they aren't in school? Now, I'm not trying to eliminate all screen time. I'm just saying that there is power in unplugging. What does the research tell us? All right. A recent study found that 71% increase in psychological distress in young people over 10 years old. And one of the reasons they believe that to be the case was the issue and the omnipresence of digital media and the lack of sleep that goes with it. I was in Wyoming, and then I flew through Dallas, where I got to see my brother and his son, and it was his birthday. And I wanted to be the first one to wake him up at 12:15 and wish him a happy birthday. And as I got closer to his room, I heard the media on, and it wasn't the TV. He was actually on his phone, surfing the internet, because he just, that there's an addictive nature to it. And an offshoot of that study, and Twenge has done some remarkable work in this area. She discovered that the happiest teens use their phones for less than 1 hour a day. Now imagine that. You would never be able to convince a kid of that, but the happier kids are finding ways to engage in the world rather than look at it on their phone. In an article published in 2017, the authors determined the importance of green space for mental health. You're going to see quite a bit of research that I found that speaks to that. There's more research in articles published, and I saw this wonderful website, fatherly.com. Children who spend time do better outside do better in life, in nature. They perform better in school. They have higher levels of self-discipline. They're more cooperative with others, better problem solvers, more creative. They feel connected with nature and become tomorrow's conservation stewards. In a study released in 2013, researchers reported that simply being outside with your kid can improve your relationship with them. And in addition to that, it also concluded that with that improved relationship comes improved parenting skills, and it reinforced that strong familiar relationship. I loved the article, and I've put it here for you in the Journal of Experiential Education, and it really spoke to me. In 2018, findings from the Pew Research found that 54% of teens think they spend way too much time on their phones. And that's what they're telling us. They believe in their hearts, they know it, that they're spending way too much time on their phones. A good friend of mine and a member of our professional advisory board, Dr. Roy Sanders, shared with me that for some kids, their phone has become like an appendage. And when you take it away, it's like removing a part of them. There's more research. In 2004, a wonderful study found by Kuo and Faber, and they've done a fair amount of work in this area as well, found that even the sight of some natural green significantly decreased the stress levels of stressed out kids with ADD and ADHD, and they could focus better after being outside. A large study from the National Institute of Mental Health looked at brain scans of kids who spent more than 7 hours a day in front of a screen, and found that there was actually a thinning of the cortex, that outer layer of neural tissue responsible for processing information. Now, we don't yet know what the impact of that thinning is, but the fact that it's happening alarms me. So here's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to take just a moment to have some fun with me. I want you to close your eyes for a second, and I want you to visualize a place of healing, wellness, and rejuvenation. So just take a moment and think about what that might look like. And as you think about that, listen to what it sounds like. See if you can hear what's happening in that place of healing and wellness and rejuvenation. Can you feel what's the temperature? Is there a wind blowing? Does it have any smells? Okay. Now, if you followed my instructions to the letter, you drew me a place of heal, or you focus in your mind a place of healing, wellness, and rejuvenation. You drew a hospital, right? You didn't draw a hospital? Huh. Interesting. Now, I wonder if those of you that are here in the chat room, would you be willing to share what you did draw? Oh, someone drew the beach. Well, that's in nature. How about anybody else? Are you willing to share? Under a California oak, hearing a fly, a pine tree in the forest. So those are all in nature. And what makes that so interesting is very often when I ask people to do that, they don't draw a hospital, they don't draw a place of healing. Instead, what they draw is a landscape, something in the natural environment. What does that tell us? That begins to help share with us how important it is to actually try and get outside and unplug, and that the power of not having power is. All right, so let's move to some of the solutions. While being in front of a screen all day makes us unhappy, being outside in nature does the opposite, and it makes me happy. Every time I say to my kids, okay, we're going to do something this weekend, and the last one was we hiked down to a place called Second Falls. Back in the day when I was actually a direct care instructor and summer camp counselor, here at SOAR, those are some potent memories. We used to backpack in out of this area quite a bit, a place called Graveyard Fields and Second Falls. And so, and my kids were like, I don't want to go. I just, and I got a lot of grief about it. And then we went, and they had such a good time. And this is what they said: we always say we don't want to go, and we always have such a good time. Why do we do that? And they loved it. You'll sleep better. More sun means more stable melatonin levels, which means more sleep. And in fact, and I've attached in some of the red spots on the webinar, when you download them later, they link directly to the core articles and the research studies that I have been talking about. But camping can actually reset your circadian rhythms. You go camping and you camp out for 2-3 nights, and you start to go to sleep kind of just about after dark. And the next thing you know, instead of, having to stay up until 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, you reset those circadian rhythms and you go to sleep at a normal time and wake up at a normal time. Petrichor, the smell of rain after a long period of warm, dry weather, is one of humanity's favorite smells. You can, and even as I say it, you can smell it. And there's this wonderful, earthy, pleasant smell. And we're driven to know because we know that rain is life. People who spend time outside are more likely to protect the environment as teenagers and adults, and respect the environment. Being in nature improves eyesight. A report from Optometry and Vision Science found that kids who spent more time outside during the day tended to have better distance vision than those who favored indoor activities. And I do a fun thing sometimes with my kids. I'll take them on a camping trip, and I'll have everyone cover one eye and stare at the fire. And this is, at nighttime, or I'll have them stare at a flashlight with the one eye, and I'll tell a story about a Native American who was on a vision quest and looking for his spirit animal. And then at the end of the story, I have them, I turn off the flashlight or have them look away from the fire and uncover their eye. And what they can see with their left eye around them, that the eye that's been open the entire time, is very minimal. But what they can see with the eye that's been closed the entire time is just truly remarkable, because your night vision is protected. In fact, it's why pirates used to wear an eye patch, so that that eye was protected. And when they found themselves down in the bottom of the ship, they just flipped up the eye patch, and their night vision was still intact. A mild suntan is actually the body's best effort to fight the cancerous effects of UV sunlight. And so, when you get a good tan, you're less likely to end up with a bad sunburn on top of that. Learning to work with your hands starts outside. Building a fire, riding a bike, catching a ball. These basic outdoor activities are the absolute starting points, the building blocks for a lifelong do-it-yourselfers. I really enjoyed the time I spent outside doing things in nature, learning how to do things, and I am an avid do-it-yourselfer. I take great offense anytime I have to pay somebody to come to my house to do something. That being true now because we're painting the house ourselves. Outdoor activities become lifelong hobbies: skiing, rock climbing, canoeing, backpacking, mountain biking. These are just a few of the activities that I did when I was a kid, and now they've become things that I keep up with, that I do all the time. I try and do one ski trip a season. There was a time I was an avid rock climber. Now, those of you who know me know that I love to be in my canoe, creaking down, class 3 and 4 whitewater. My son and I go backpacking at least once a year. So, and again, you are creating this love and an embrace for something other than looking at your phone. There's a reason summer camps don't allow cell phones. We know that, that it's easier to bond without distractions and invest in the moment when you're not staring at a phone. We also know that when your phone is on or you have your phone, you're not fully present. And when you're not fully present, then it makes it really difficult to kind of work through the transition of doing things and being in a new place. Being a more active child leads to being an active, healthy adult. Being a sedentary child leads to being unhealthy, sedentary adult. And your best memories probably don't start with, there I was in front of the computer. Your child won't remember yet another day spent on the computer. I say that to my son all the time. Jay, let's make a memory. On the other hand, they will always remember that hike that led to the top of that breathtaking view. And I want to say something about breathtaking views. And I know this to be an absolute fact. When I'm driving the Blue Ridge Parkway and I stop at an overlook and I look at a view, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty view. And then I get back in and go. But when I hike to an overview and I look out at the valley below me, that meant a lot more to me because I earned it. I don't take it for granted. Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, lowers the risk of asthma and deals with lots of ailments, and so getting outside physically matters. There's no such thing as bad weather, only the wrong clothes. And I find that particularly interesting in this day and age. It is really, really difficult to find quality rain gear for young children. Why is that? Because they're not outside in the rain. Because they are not outside in the rain. Jonathan Jones and I, years ago, when we were scouting Costa Rica as a possible site, one of the things that we marveled at, it's raining and we're covered up and we've got our rain gear on, and we're scurrying to get out from the rain, and the ticas and the ticos, the locals, just walked in the rain like it was no big deal, like it didn't matter. And I find myself often when it's raining and I'm outside, instead of rushing to the car, trying to get under cover, just to stroll in the rain, because it's okay. It's okay to be wet. It's not okay to be cold and wet, but it's okay to be wet. Nature is full of teachable moments. It offers a place you can learn, overcome your fears, test your limits, and learn experientially. So many experiential lessons that come from opportunities that you find outside. Nature builds resilience. Working through challenges like hiking in the rain or overcoming exhaustion to get to the next peak can be the basis for extraordinary discussions relating to lessons learned outside to deal with practical challenges in our normal lives. Now, that's a mouthful, folks, but let me just tell you, I've given you the essence and the secret of SOAR. We call it the metaphoric transfer of learning. We take these experiences that we're having in an outside environment, through trials and tribulations. And then we take, okay, what do we learn from those experiences? And then we use a metaphor to describe that, how it is similar to something in our real life. And then what is the learning that we occurred in this environment that we could apply back to our normal lives and have it bring value? And those discussions are absolutely priceless. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about, the impact of Jack London's book, The Call of the Wild. When it was written years ago, it just took a storm. It just stormed the country, and part of it was because inside of us there is still something that is wild, and it needs to be fed. It needs to be outside. It needs to, to be connected to this earth. Think back to the things that when you visualized your visualizations, they were all focused on the outside, being outside. In New York City, there's a little park called Hallett Sanctuary in Central Park, and for years it went completely untouched because, as beautiful a green space as Central Park is, there was this one little section of it that wasn't touched until an invasive species started to take it over. We are driven to explore and connect with nature. My favorite adventurers are Ernest Shackleton, Jacques Cousteau, and Jane Goodall. And what do they all have in common? They all pushed the boundaries of what was possible, and they all did it in our natural world, in our natural environment. Okay. Outside Magazine did a wonderful article on us, and Florence Williams, who wrote the Nature Fix, I remember years ago, she called me up, and she was doing a article for Outside Magazine about ADHD and is fuel for adventure. And the more we talked, I kept hearing her say, "Huh," and all she was really looking for was a quote to add to her article. And instead, when we were done talking, when we completed our conversation, she asked one simple question. She said, "Can I come out and join your team on one of their expeditions?" I said, "Sure." And so she came out and joined the team, and the Academy at SOAR became the focal point that the article was written about and around. She then went on to write this wonderful book called The Nature Fix: Why Nature Makes Us Happier, Healthier, More Creative. I have a copy. I am so glad. And she referenced SOAR again in that book. But it's so true. Without nature, we aren't as happy, healthier, and more creative. Are you familiar with Richard Lew's work, Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder? Again, it's another important read that I encourage you to take a look at. So let's talk about, we've talked about the why. Now let's talk about the how, because this is your homework, okay, folks? All right, these are some. I've got several slides of opportunities to get outside. All right, find a hot or warm springs. It's a whole lot less boring than a hot tub, right? Zip lines just sprung up all over the country. Zip lining high above the forest floor is infinitely more exhilarating than a video game. Absolutely. Geocaching. Now, those of you that don't know what geocaching is that you go to a website and you find coordinates, and then you go to those coordinates, and you're probably going to find some sort of bin where people have left a little treasure or a note. And those treasure hunts give kids a connection to nature and people who left those treasures behind. It's really, really cool. Find a lake and a rope swing. Splashing into the water or jumping off a cliff into deep water is both exhilarating and fun. And I will say, though, you've got to check and make sure that the water really is deep enough. I don't want anyone to get hurt, but there really is nothing quite like a good rope swing or jumping off of a cliff into the water below. There's a right way to make a s'more, and it takes practice. I must say that I'm a toaster, and there are other members in my family that are flamers. They like to get a good char on their marshmallow. I like to get the perfect smushy s'more where the marshmallow is just golden brown. And one of my favorite things about s'mores is that it's being made around a campfire and we're telling stories. It was my birthday weekend a few weekends ago, and the family, we all went camping in hot springs. And so we had a chance to enjoy a nice soak in a hot spring. And then that night, my wife and son were hungry, and so they went to eat. And my daughter Landry and I stayed back, and I started telling stories. And when my son got back, he said, "What did you guys do?" And Landry said, "Dad was telling stories around the campfire." And Jay's reaction was, "Well, you got the better end of that deal." More opportunities. There's a green space near you. In addition to all the national park systems, there are state and local parks everywhere. There's a beautiful walk just 5 minutes from my house. There's a green space near you. Survival skills create grit. Knowing how to navigate with a compass, read a topo map, start a fire with flint and steel, make a shelter out of resources you find on the ground. It's incredibly empowering. You can buy those little flint and steel kits, even at Walmart for a few bucks. And then, you just take a piece of cotton, floof it up, strike it, woof, you've got a little fire in your hands. Now, don't give those to firebugs, but, it's a little more powerful than just lighting a match or starting a fire with a lighter. Have you ever experienced true darkness? Because if you haven't, it's really quite an amazing thing. We take kids caving here, and we get deep inside the cave, and we have everybody turn off their lights, and we sit in a circle, and we're in absolute, utter, pure blackness. And if you've never experienced that, it really is something that you should. It's an eerie, remarkable feeling. Who doesn't love a good water fight? Super soakers, squirt guns, water balloons, splash contests, or even a garden hose makes for instant outside fun. Completely gets soaking wet. Go for a hike, a bike ride, or canoe a lake or river to make quality memories. Again, you're not going to remember the days you sat on the couch. You're not going to remember the days that you just sat at the computer playing video games. You will remember those adventures that you got out and you canoed to that island, and then you had a little picnic lunch, and then you went swimming for the day, and then you canoed back to the house, and you got home completely exhausted, a little sun tainted, but just absolutely delighted in the experience that you had a chance to have. Go fly a kite. And then we've actually advanced to some stunt kites, and we on windy days we take them to an open field, and we have a ball flying these stunt kites. Create a scavenger hunt, whether it's things in nature or just to walk outside to give it some meaning and purpose. Take a waterfall tour. Go fishing. Hopefully you get to go catching. Tube a river. Visit a historic site. Picnic at a spring or a watering hole or a lake. Just an outside picnic. Don't just read about life. Live it. I'm going to end this webinar with just a couple pictures. This is my last backpacking trip with my son. We saw some beautiful waterfalls. We had some mountaintop experiences. That elevation was at nearly 5,000 feet. We had a chance to enjoy the rain and the weather. Hopefully we're going to do another one here in the month of October. And then my daughter loves to go canoeing with me. And this is us coming through Nantahala Falls. But we get out there. We live life. We're not just letting it let us pass us by. And every chance I have to get my kids outside, we do it. So I encourage all of you to find ways to get outside, to actually have these experiences, because without them, it's not enough to just stare at your phone. It's not enough to just watch other people do it. You have to get unplugged. And without it, we're going to be less happy. We're going to get less sleep. We're going to be less productive. And there are going to be things that we should care about that we won't. I want to thank you so much for your time and attention. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks. We're going to move to a bi-monthly webinar series, and so be looking for the results. Also, at the end of the month, Elaine Taylor-Klaus, who joined us a little while ago for a webinar, she'll be doing a webinar on her new book, The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids with ADHD, Anxiety, and More. She's a dear friend, and this is a remarkable book. So I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate all of you that help and support what we do. You have a great week, and thanks again so much.